Welcome back to MLB Tonight. Earlier in the show, we were talking with J.P. Morosi about the World Baseball Classic, which is, as of Tuesday, 50 days away. So the players that are participating in this event, they're going to report to spring training camps February 13th, so a little bit earlier than normal as they get ready for the upcoming WBC. Let's send it over to Sean Casey and Dan O'Dowd, who are standing by in Studio 42. And fellas, normally, at what point are hitters, what are they looking like? What are they trying to focus on at this point of the offseason as they get ready for the upcoming campaign?
Okay, Case. Thanks, Robert. Walk me through a couple different scenarios. So let's say you're a young player. We're pretty much a month out from the start of spring training, and you're trying to show up in camp and make the team. Where are you at in your ramp up for that preparation?
I'm definitely more ramped up. As a young player, when the season was over, I think I would start hitting. So if the season was over at the end of September for guys that didn't make the postseason, I'm already hitting mid-November.
So when you say already hitting, walk me.
So what I'm doing is I'm doing some cage work initially. I'm just going to do some tee work, get in there by myself, hit off a tee, you know. And I love it. The great thing about the tee, Dan, is that you can really manipulate it. And I can manipulate if I want to work middle of the way. I can put it on the back of my stance, rocking some balls over there. For most of the time, for me, I'm trying to, hit balls back up the tee, left center, and manipulate it, maybe pitches in. About 3 weeks of that, I'll be doing by myself. Then I start doing some flips. Now I'm into December, some flips. But then I'm going to start seeing some live BP. And I know for me, when I was playing, I lived down in Jupiter, Florida, just in the offseason so that I could get those reps in.
So you do that out on the field at that point in time?
Yeah, I'm out on the field probably in December,
Okay, what about like high-speed velocity pitching machines? You start working off of those type of machines as you get closer to spring training?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. As a young player, I'm still in December probably hitting off those machines, no doubt.
Okay, walk me through it now. You're now a veteran player.
Right.
And you kind of know what your spot is on the team. Yeah. Is it a lot different in your ramp up?
It's a lot different because the wear and tear of the year, mentally, but I think you know what your routine is. The biggest thing is when you first come in the big leagues, Dan, the veterans say,
let's send it over to Sean Casey and Dan O'Dowd, who are standing by in Studio 40.
Well, you start to really know that as you become a veteran player. So for me, I didn't really pick up a bat until January 1st. And then I would just ramp it up a little bit because I knew I had 6 weeks of spring training to get ready for the season.
So just finding your swing, like you can lose your swing feel pretty easy.
Yeah.
In your case, was it easy to find the triggers of your swing as you ramped up towards spring training?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is getting the reps in, and then visually starting to see if guys are throwing me BP or seeing a high velocity machine, just getting that timing down. The timing down is big, but the biggest thing is early at spring training back in the day when those guys would go and work in the offseason and come, they needed those 6 weeks. Nowadays, guys in the offseason are lifting, they're doing everything. If guys are throwing me BP or seeing a high velocity machine, just getting that timing down. The timing down is big, but the biggest thing is early at spring training back in the day when those guys would go and work in the offseason and come, they needed those 6 weeks. Nowadays, guys in the offseason are lifting, they're doing everything they can. So as a veteran player, you have really 6 weeks to get ready for the season.
Okay, now let's jump in with the WBC where you almost have no ramp-up time. Where are you at now knowing you got to compete? Like you're on the treadmill and you're really running at a high level now.
Game-changing. If I'm in the WBC as a veteran player, I'm hitting early. I'm going to start hitting in December. I'm going to start seeing velocity. And what I'm going to do, too, is I'm going to find guys in the area and say, hey, listen, you throw in a bullpen? Can I get some live ABs off you? Because the biggest thing about when you come to spring training as a player, the toughest thing is when you face those first live ABs, when you got the pitcher throwing 98 miles an hour, and you're up here, you've been a big leaguer for 8 years, literally, Dan, it goes through your mind, how am I going to hit that? How am I going to hit that? So visually.
So even then, after being in the big leagues.
It's incredible. After all the years, you get in there, that first day of spring training, like, oh, yeah, here we go. Verlander, go ahead. No, bam, 98. And in your mind, like, I can't hit that. That's incredible. But your eyes eventually get used to it. So if you're WBC, you got to start ramping up, and you got to start seeing some pitching before you get to spring training.
So is your drill work is all the same. You just sped everything up a little bit more on the calendar.
Yeah, exactly. My drill work's the same, but like I said, if I'm WBC, I got to start a few weeks earlier.
Case, is there one drill in particular for you that's like your go-to drill at any stage of your career that you knew this is the one drill I've got to do to get myself right?
You know what? I was a big long tee guy. In the cages, I was a big guy, set the tee up, and if I would try to hit 40 to 60 balls in that left center corner. Wham, 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 wham.
Those backspin line drives.
Backspin the balls. Yeah, catch the ball right here. Backspin 60 balls into that left center corner.
Is that off of a flip then for you?
No, a lot of times I do it off a tee.
Off a tee.
Off a tee. You know, tee. And I loved working by myself. I felt like it was time to really like build that confidence, that inner trust of really what I was trying to do. But 60 balls, left center corner, and then I'd walk out.
Robert, this man right here, he was young. He still is young. But he was an elite hitter. Yeah. So that's how an elite hitter prepared to be the best he could be going into spring training.
Great stuff as always, guys. We'll see you back here in just a few. We're going to come back here on MLB Tonight. New face behind the plate. New outlook for a familiar name on the mound. Coming up, we'll focus on the St. Louis Cardinals, including why Jack Flaherty is feeling bullish about his chances in 2023.
A contract, Robert. It'll be the most talked about issue throughout the course of the season, throughout the entire offseason. And if I'm Anaheim, if I'm not in it and I don't think I can bring him back, I mean, I'm starting to have discussions early on. For me, the first 2 months of that season this year for the Angels is going to mean so much, because if they want to get value for him, they can't wait till the 31st trade. They got to move up that thought process in their minds.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Why do I have a feeling the contract is going to be like, here's a boatload of money and a small Caribbean island? That's for you. That's for you, Shohei, to come to our team. All right, let's talk about another free agent who's a free agent right now, and that is Aroldis Chapman. Our John Heyman sending out this tweet on Tuesday afternoon. The Marlins are among a few teams considering Aroldis Chapman, who, of course, lives in South Florida. He has spent the last several seasons with the New York Yankees, did win a title with the Chicago Cubs. Recently, the tenure there towards the end of his Yankee tenure, it did not go well for Aroldis Chapman nor the Yankees. So, Dan, what about the Marlins, and maybe what other teams do you see on the radar for
I think
Chapman?
Anybody that still has opening in the back end of the bullpen, I'm shocked we haven't heard his name more. I mean, he did not end well, but relievers and closers are mercurial anyway, Case. They have good years, they have bad years. If healthy, which I think were his issues last year, and his lack of focus, if those two things are lined up right now, he's probably going to get a, make good kind of contract, which might put him in a perfect situation to actually have a good year.
I'll tell you what, too, for a guy like this, a little older, that's living, is going to turn 35 in February, that's a little older, lives in Miami, this is a perfect situation. If he ends up going down there to Miami, I think he still has a lot left in the tank.
Let's say hello to our insider, JP Morosi.
Last year, lowest in his career. This guy still has some fuel in the tank. He's a left-hander, power arm. I think, for me, being that kind of age, signing with my hometown team, knowing I'm going to be home, I think it'd be a great fit.
Yeah, 10.7, still pretty good.
If you're a contender and maybe you don't have an opening as the closer and he's open to it, would you bring him in as a setup man and maybe can rebuild value there?
To have Aroldis Chapman in my pen anywhere, like Dan was saying, hey, listen, he had a little bit of a down year. This guy is still a great pitcher. To be a setup guy or a closer, he'd have huge value.
I only disagree, Case, with a little bit, is that when you've been a closer your entire career, you're kind of programmed for the ninth. That other role involves sometimes getting up, getting down, the unpredictability of usage. I think he'll be at his best when he's designated as a ninth inning guy. I'm not sure physically he could handle a lot more than one inning at a time.
Okay. All right. So we'll have to see what happens with Aroldis Chapman. We began this hour talking about Shohei Ohtani. Speaking of which, is Ohtani and the Japanese team putting together the most loaded squad in WBC history? What about Correa and Lindor back together? And Alcantara leading the DR? And what about the defending champions, Mike Trout in the U.S.? We're talking WBC next. Let's send it over to Sean Casey and Dan O'Dowd, who are standing by in Studio 42.